Hello, hello, hello. My name is NicholassRivas. I talk about politics and stuff. And today we're going to be talking about the whole Vaush kind of controversy. Another week, another Vaush controversy. We all agree. I like Vaush. I definitely watch him more than I think other YouTubers. And even saying that, I feel kind of like weird saying that because a lot of people don't like him. And it's not just like people who disagree with him on like the other side of the political aisle. It's people who are lefties or self-proclaimed or progressives or liberals. They don't like him. They find him annoying. They think that he's misogynistic. Some people call him a pedo. I definitely don't have the greatest image of Vosh, given that some of his approaches seem to be he's very rude. He's very I guess brash, but none of my complaints come from me actually disagreeing with his politics. I think pound for pound policy, I definitely agree. And for that, a lot of people feel, get the hell out of here, you gross. But I think I stand in firmly what I believe in. And so I definitely, in seeing that hit this most recent controversy, quote unquote, I don't know. I'm just I'm very like, I can see why people are getting confused, but I still don't get it. So Vosh basically responded to a Twitter user named La Madre de los Gatos, and she basically said that men don't just fall down the alt-right pipeline. I think in response to like an Andrew Tate discussion of like how these young men were falling into Andrew Tate's, like similar mindset. Like he'll say like all these things and then men will just parrot it. And I've noticed that with young men, or just men. She's saying men. I'm assuming young men. She is saying men. I think it's a different story, and I think this is some people talking past each other. Where if we're talking about like if you're 30 or 40 and you're falling down an alt-right pipeline, this is not. I don't think I'm talking about them, and I don't think Vosh is either. But I think a lot of people saw his response and started talking past him. It's a lot of, I think a lot of people just misunderstanding. Now, if you disagree with the core of it, please tell me. But I don't even think I'm even getting close to the core of the issue here. I think it's a lot of just miscommunication. But I'll continue. Vosh basically said that like this is not true. I think men are being pushed to it. Now, again, I when I read his thread and when I read the original tweet seems to be talking about men, right? And I think we as people, and what Vosh is pointing out is that I think the assumption is young men when people say the fall down the alt-right pipeline. Again, people are talking past each other. I could also be missing their points, but that's how I'm seeing it. And honestly, I'm going to stick by that and say, yeah, a 40-year-old guy isn't falling down the pipeline, but a 13-year-old, and I've seen this. I grew up as a boy. I saw it around me. Kids my age were falling into these pipelines. Maybe not as abhorrent as nowadays is like with Andrew Tate's, but we definitely had similarities, and we definitely had people, online influencers or politicians, or whoever who said some crappy things and we just regurgitated it. I didn't, because I think I always grew up as a lefty. I definitely probably had ideas, I'm sure. But I also grew up with like two hippie lefties, so I'm very much biased in that regard. But I think, given the point of the original Twitter poster, I think she's confused on the whole fall down for men. Like, I think we got to clarify that. If she says that young boys aren't falling down this pipeline, she's just wrong. I just can't see that. I don't know. And I'm assuming she's a she. I just, because I saw the mother of cats. But I don't know. I don't know them. And I don't think they've seen the world that I've seen. And I don't think they know the statistics that we know, where young white men, are typically the people who vote for Trump, right? By a huge margin. When you call people like, a colonist, or a young man like favoring the patriarchy, it's hard to look at that kid and say, how is he, contributing to the patriarchy when he's just a kid, just because he's a dude, right? And my thing is like, look, I understand that all men carry a lot of weight because of social hierarchy and because of how women have been treated. All men carry that. But to blame the young boys who are just learning and walking into this world is going to push them away than it is to pull us in. Now, what I'm reading is that her complaint is that if you're not part of this, how I'm reading this is, if you're not part of my club, screw you. Like, I'm not here to teach you. And I'm not saying, this woman is supposed to teach people, or this person is supposed to teach these men. But I think as a group, and as all of us collective on Twitter reading this and discussing this, we should say, why aren't we talking to young men and raising them better, right? We raise a group of men who hate the ladies, and we have the babies. It's the Tupac rap. How are we going to continue feeding into this? You're either by fueling it on a right-leaning side or a left-leaning side. Not to sound like a centrist, but we're just feeding into it. If we tell these men that they're the reason for the patriarchy and they're 13, 12, I think we're pushing them more than we're pulling. And I hope for the most part that they learn from that and go, well, I'm not contributing to the patriarchy if I, do this, that, and really do good for my fellow people, for my fellow humans, for my fellow women, for my fellow men. I will call it out. Like, my point is just to call this out and educate them, but not push them away, not blame them. I can't see a world where I blame my 15-year-old cousin, my 16-year-old nephew. Like, they are kids in a system, and I think it's our jobs to educate them. And I think as a collective, we should all agree on that. And I feel like that's where we're missing the point. I think the original Twitter poster, the Vaush's, I see both ends of it, but I agree more with Vaush that we are not catering to these men as much as we should. And I think people believe we shouldn't cater to them at all. And that's where I feel like I just don't agree with you. I think how we get out of this misogynistic patriarchy is to teach men about it, but don't blame them. Again, I'm saying men, I'm talking about young dudes, even 20-year-olds. I think we should teach them. I think we should look at them, and I don't expect everyone to teach them, but I feel like myself, if I am to have young men, some boys, I want to teach them. And I think that's how we break out of this cycle of the patriarchy, of the misogynistic tendencies that we just kind of let slide, or we fuel. And I think that's what Vaush is saying. And I, like I said, I kind of agree on both ends. I saw a response to Vaush's comments. For one, making fun of his analogy, where he compared to like how, gosh, I'm gonna butcher it now. He brought in like black movements being discredited, racist movements being discredited, or something like that. And people were like, "Oh, dude, you're comparing, black rights and suffrage to alt-right pipeline." It definitely didn't look good optically, but I still agree with his point. I agree that if we push people away, we're not helping the cause. And I get it. It's not our job to educate, white people on racism. It's not our job to educate men on misogyny. And I don't know if that analogy is great, but I think the core of it is that we shouldn't be pushing people away, and we should be trying to understand and educate. I don't like the blaming aspect. And I understand it's very normal to blame, because if someone is part of the blame, you should. But I'm picturing the 70, 60-year-old man in Congress who was abhorrently against women's rights. That's what I'm picturing. And maybe I'm being optimistic. Maybe I'm being naive. I don't know. I really can't pin it on how to discuss this. But I definitely feel there are good counterpoints. When I saw another Twitter thread where they called out Vaush, saying that, hey, I grew up a woman, and you never hear stories of women falling down the alt-right pipeline as much as men. And I would argue that's a great point, but I think, again, it goes to the patriarchy. Women aren't being targeted like men are. And I don't know if that's good. I don't know if it's bad. I'm just saying that I think the ultimate goal, like, if that is true, that women are not, and I believe it, are not fueling the alt-right pipeline as much as men are, I think the core goal, the end goal is the same. We need to still educate our men, and we need to love our men. And if anyone disagrees with me, I don't think they're listening to me, or they're being serious, or they're good people. Like, I just can't see you being so hatred against men or young men, and then expect to be a better, far from patriarchy. I mean, we all have to work together in some capacity, but I get it. People have been burned by the patriarchy. People have been burned by our system. So I think that's why people have these maybe tunnel vision or blinders up. But I think end goal, and it's kind of like saying crime is bad, we should do good stuff. But really, I think the point is, on either end, we should just love our men more and teach them. I don't know why that's such a hard thing to grasp, and I don't think much people would disagree with that. But I'm curious. I'm curious because maybe I'm just missing the point here, and maybe it's my cis male tendencies looking past some of these complaints. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just here to be a cute bitch. So thank y'all very much, and peace.